I think it's time to get started. I would like to welcome all of you here in Odense and also welcome you in Agerskov and Brønderslev as well, and Holstebro. So today is our annual meeting with the day where we will see the winners of this year's results. We'll do this as the last part of the program. But before this, we will have like 3 different introductions of different kinds. We'll start today with my colleague Rikke, and together with Sven from the laboratory. They will talk about the small piglets and what is the reason why they die and what can we do to save them. After this, my colleague Hans will come here and talk about the Streptococcus problems we do see in some farms out there. And according to Hans, maybe it's been a bigger problem since zinc was taken out of the feeding. And as the last speaker, we have Niels Helund. He will talk about the economics and why it is important to save the last pig as well. Yeah. After this, we'll have a short coffee break, and then we'll meet all of us down in the big room down there to have the competition, the winners shown down there. At first, I would like to welcome Sven to talk about the experiences from the lab, and welcome to you.
Yeah, hello. I am Sven, and I'm working with diagnostics. And as I see it, diagnostics is a timeline of questions. It starts with a what. What is the problem? What did the piglet die of? And then it goes on with a why. And every time you have an answer, it opens up for a new question. Why? But all of a sudden, somebody has to say, what can we do about it? Okay, in my opinion, every time a pig dies, somebody should ask the question, what is the reason for its death and why? And I will inspire you, I hope, to open up the pigs and look inside. Okay, today we are talking about what do piglets die of, and what do we know? Some years ago, we made this study where we ear-tagged 10,000 pigs at birth in 9 different herds. And of those pigs, 1,456 piglets died as piglets. And here is the results. 60% of the dead piglets was between day 1 and day 4. And the most common reason was squeezing. Then there was the purple one, piglet that was born weak, and on the 3rd place, the yellow one, pig that died because of hunger. From day 5 to 11, another 20% of the pigs that died was in this group. And as you can see in the red and the yellow, squeezing and hunger was the most common reason. But the green and the blue, you can see that diarrhea and blood poisoning began to matter here. Between day 12 and weaning, another 20% of the piglets died. And as you can see, the blue color, its blood poisoning, was the main reason for the death. Another way to say the same, it's in Kellerup, we have this pattegrise-USK. Do you know that? We took all our pattegrise-USK and put them together in one data set, and here's the results. Now we put it day by day, so this is piglets died day 1, day 2, day 3, and so on. Okay, as you can see, the most common reason for dying was squeezing, and that was in the in the first days, and second place in day 1 was piglets born weak, and then hunger began to matter day 2, 3, 4, and so. And when the piglets get older, blood poisoning is the main reason for dying. Okay, so that's what the piglets die of in general: squeezing, weakly born piglets, hunger, and blood poisoning. But what matters is not what happens in general. What matters is what is the problem in your herd. And what is even more important is why. For instance, a squeezed pig like this, you can see it's squeezed by this edema under the skin. It's a typical sign of squeezing. If this squeezed piglet was active, you can see if it was active by the hooves. Every piglet is born with this wax caps on the hooves, and in 1 or 2 hours when they are moving around, it's grinded off. Another way to look if the piglets are active is by looking at the foreknee. You can see here this piglet has a wound on the foreknee, and those two have a little grinding. And that's healthy because now we know that this piglet has been active. Okay, these squeeze active piglets, if they have milk in the stomach, you have to find the reason for squeezing in the climate or in the interior design, or maybe you should consider if your cave training is good enough. On the other hand, if the squeezed active pig has an empty stomach, you know it's hungry, and maybe it goes to the udder in the wrong time, and therefore it's squeezed. Then you have to look at the sow's milking capacity, or consider if your litters are too big. If the squeezed pig are passive, and that's a pig with still this wax, a little left of the wax caps, or without any squeezing on the foreknee, then even though there's milk or not in the stomach, you have to, it's because the pig was passive that it was squeezed. So two main reasons for that is viral infections in late pregnancy, or that the piglet had too low body temperature. If we look at the piglet born weak, it's nearly the same as saying small pigs. This slide shows the weight of piglets in 3 different herds. 12,000 pigs was weighed at birth, and you can see that 1% of them weighed below 500 grams. Another 3% weighed between 500 and 700 grams. And this is from 2 other studies where they have looked at survival in relation to weight. And what we can see, if we put these 2 studies together, is that the 1% under 500 grams, 3 out of 4 piglets will never get weaned. They die before. And the 3% between 500 and 700 grams, half of them will die. So what do we do about that? I think you should consider euthanizing the pigs, the small pigs, because most of them will die anyway, and they make a lot of trouble breaking up the litters, so you have to move too much around the piglets. And the few that still lives at weaning, they go to the baby stall and make a lot of problem in the climate section. I know that's my opinion, and it can be discussed. If you want them to live, you have to be an expert and give them a lot of tender love and care. At least you have to put them in a minstearme litter where they are put together with piglets as small as themselves. Then I was thinking, what about sow feeding? Can't we feed the sow in a way that we avoid these little pigs? And I didn't know that, so I asked this nice guy, Thomas Brun. He's an expert in feeding. And he told me that they have been trying a lot of different things in hope that the they could feed the pregnant sow so the pigs will get a little bigger. One thing was effective, that was feeding with a high amount of omega-3, but that was much too expensive. Okay, the piglets dying of hunger. It looks like this. You have this empty stomach with a lot of air in it, this empty intestine with also a lot of air in it, and this is how a stomach in a healthy pig should look with this cottage cheese. So if a pig dies of hunger, it hasn't got milk enough, and there can be two reasons for that. Either the sow hasn't got enough milk, or it's put in a too big litter. My experience is that it's different from herd to herd where these hungry pigs are. Sometimes it's day 2 and 3, and another herd it's day 4 and 5. And I will recommend that you register this at your farm, and then the day before, look very carefully to the pigs. Are they hungry? Do they have to be moved to Armeso? Blood poisoning. Pigs dying of blood poisoning can look like this. We have opened the pig in the chest and the abdominal cavity, and here we can see the heart with all this infection on it. We can also see the liver is swollen, and that's a very typical sign of blood poisoning, but it can look in very different ways. To get blood poisoning, the pig has to have this combination of things: aggressive bacteria, it has to be weakened, and there has to be holes in it. First, the bacteria. These 4 bacteria, E. coli, beta hemolytic Streptococcus, Streptococcus suis, and Glycerella, is the most common bacteria we find. In the young piglets, it's E. coli, and in the older piglets, it's Streptococcus suis and Glycerella. But an E. coli is very different. You can have a very friendly E. coli, and you can have a very aggressive E. coli, and so it is with all the bacteria. Piglets with weakened immune system. The colostrum is very important. Both the amount of colostrum and the quality of the colostrum is important. Then the climate. If there is wet and cold, the piglet uses all its resources to get warm, and there's no resources left for the immune system. And then there's other diseases. Diseases that don't kill the piglet but make it so weak that the blood poisoning will get it. I can mention, for instance, coccidiosis, or this one I'll show you. That's my favorite one, infection in the nasal cavity. These are called muslingeben in Danish, congenisalis in Latin. I don't know the English word. It has a large surface, and its job is to moisturize and heat and clean the air before it goes to the lungs. If we have an infection, it can look like this. This is Bordetella, and you can see the muslingeben is shrunken. Here we have pus, and here we have a totally stuffed nose, and this pig has to breathe to the mouth. Oh. Yeah, every time you necropsy a pig, you have to open the nose, and I will show you. It takes 2 seconds, like this. I show you again. So there's no excuse. 4 important reasons for inflammation is Bordetella. Bordetella, influenza, dust, and ammonia. It's the 4 main reasons, and I'll hurry a little here because I have to speak about the holes. It's very important. The piglet are born with a physical barrier of skin and mucosal membranes, and it's very difficult for bacteria to enter that. But we make a lot of holes in them. The tail, castration, teeth, injections, belly button, wounds on the foreknee, and wounds in the rim of the hoof. And by that, I hope I have inspired you to look in the pig and ask the right questions. What is wrong and why? Because if you know why, you can do something about it. Thank you.
Er det... Nå, okay. Okay, so Sven gave us a very nice introduction on actually what I would like to tell you about, because I have a true case story where we actually used all the good and nice things Sven just said and put it into something practical we could use out there. So, yeah, from dead to alive, it's a case of how we reduce the mortality in the farrowing unit for them to become alive again. So, this case here had 730 sows in the unit. The mortality was so around 15% normally, but suddenly there was an increase. You can see here to 20%, but actually it rose even more, leading up to this point here. And by this week here, week 16, they gathered 8 pigs that looked a lot like the cases they described. These rather large pigs, suddenly dead, 10, 14 days old, circa. So we got a test result rather fast from the laboratory, and we wanted to use a lot of it as possible, so as much as possible. One of the things I used a lot was the autopsy description. All the wounds, the piglets had a lot of wounds on different parts of the body, like the front knees, the navel, the castration. What I also noticed in the farm was on the other pigs that the tails were actually swollen as well. So to the left here you see the conclusion from the laboratory. It was blood poisoning and it was an E. coli, but it was also coccidia. So they made a bacteriological examination where they found E. coli inside the body, but they also found these coccidiose in the intestines. So from this, we also asked for a resistant test to make sure what do we do about the bacteria. So we get a whole lot of names and numbers, but let's start by removing the ones that are resistant. Then I'm going to remove the ones we're not allowed to use, which leads us to 2, and we chose the top one in this farm. And as you see here in week 17, in the kind of middle week 17, we started to take action, and you can see how the mortality rate dropped severely. So you can actually almost see like we halved the mortality here. So what did we do actually? And this might seem a little bit maybe simple to you guys, but I just want to point out that sometimes it's actually just the small things that matter out there. So first thing here is, because we had a lot of wounds on the pigs, I wanted to address this. The first point is the tail burner here. I wanted to make sure that it had the correct heat level and they were doing this correctly, because as I told you, they had infections in the tail. I could see the tails were swollen, but also we don't want this kind of round thing on the tail. We want a straight cut that heals properly. And I wanted to address the umbilical cords, because we discovered that they accidentally cut the umbilical cords while they were wet. So this we addressed to become dry instead. The next thing is I wanted to address the castration process. This is a before picture. So the things we changed here is the hygiene. This had to be clean. This was where you wanted to disinfect your tools. It needs to be clean. And also I addressed them, I wanted them to use 2 tools, so you always have one in the cleaning, disinfecting, while you use the other one, and then you switch. But also for disinfectant, I recommended them to use chlorhexidine sprit. Yes, and we had to take a look on how were they actually treating for coccidiosis, because this was apparently not good enough. So we checked up on the dosage and the days, and I know this can vary in your farms depending on what product you use. So I will just encourage you to take a look at this. Are we actually doing it correctly out there? The next thing is we took a look at the cart they were using for moving pigs and castration. This is an after picture. The before picture was just one bottom with a little bit of straw and a lot of not so nice things for them to be around. So I made them, I suggested how they could do it, and they made this kind of like upgrade. They made an elevated plate that had drainage in it, so everything the piglets did while they were there would disappear and move away. Also, they had to make it washable. So the next thing is Streptococcus. It's kind of a pink substance that is antimicrobial. I had demanded them to make the floors pink, also making the boots pink, because I wanted to break the chain of infections around the stable in the farrowing unit. The next thing is they have this wagon where they feed with milk. They were actually good at cleaning this part of the wagon, but they missed this part of the wagon. So they would always save infectious stuff for next time. This is also the wagon we used for treating with antibiotics to make sure that every pig got the correct dosage. And the last thing I asked them to do was to supplement the sow feed with a probiotica called Bactocell. We feed them with live bacteria to ensure that they get like this correct flora, because the sow will shit in the pig in the area where the pigs are. So I wanted to try to control the correct amount or the correct bacteria flora that would be in there. So the result was big, nice pigs and not so much dead pigs out there. But this is biology, and everything is alive, and I can tell you that they are still working on it. They are not allowed to loosen the reins, as we say in Denmark. They need to stay in focus on the hygiene situation out there, because if they slack a little bit, it will become worse again, I assume. So this is a happy farmer and a happy employers. So shortly here for you guys, I listed them up, what I just said. I want you to consider, as Sven said, to submit samples. Look at the pigs and send them in what is representative for your situation out there. And I made 3 categories. The perforated pig with all the holes. I wanted to address the hygiene out there. The tail burner, temperature, castration, what kind of disinfection do you use, and the umbilical cords. The second bullet is biosecurity. I want to break the chain of infections with coccidiosis, Streptococcus, the cart you are using, and the feeding cart. And the last part is an extra thing here, the intestinal flora of the sow. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Rikke and Sven. It was 2 very nice presentations. I'm sorry, I think I pressed Sven a little. It was very fast. He got a lot of information for us, and you could have another 2 minutes, I think. But I think it was interesting. Sven has got these 4 big groups of reasons for dead pigs. I guess we know that, all of us. A lot of them die from squeezing. But squeezing is not just a squeezing. There's also active squeezing and passive squeezing. And it's important that we try to figure out the reason why these small piglets die. And also the reason for these blood poisonings. Rikke has a very nice example here. What can we do to avoid all these blood poisonings? So that was very nice and some very good practical things to bring home, I think. There's 2 minutes and then Hans will come here, talk further on about Streptococcus, one of the bacteria that also Sven mentioned on his slide. We have quite a lot of them out there, and we'll be informed about that in a few minutes. So, any questions for Sven and Rikke?
Yes, I have.
Yeah.
Maybe you have 2 minutes more.
Yeah.
Maybe you can explain why do you think it's good option to kill the smallest pigs? Because I will explain why I'm asking. Because we have the Danish genetics or Danbred. They are famous because they have very high amount of piglets. But if we will kill this one. What the difference between Danbred and topic snoreskin, for example? So why do you think it's a good idea?
First, I would say I know it's an ethical question and it can be discussed, but I think it's very few of the pigs I will kill, the very smallest one. And I think if you don't kill them, they will be in litters, and many of them will die. So the litters will break up, and you have to move around the pigs in the farrowing unit. And I think that this moving around will cost you so much on the health that it can't pay for the few pigs that you kill.
So the litters will be smaller, and we need to find the new piglets to put more in the pen.
Yeah, and every time you move a pig, you also move infection from one sow to another, and the piglets in the place where you move it to hasn't got the same immunity as the pigs are following each other in the litter, so they are immune for the same bugs. And then if you move around, you will mix that up, I think. Yeah.
Also, I think Bogdan has a question, but just I think one of Sven's points is also if we need to kill these small ones, it should be on the day of birth. Of course, we take the decision very early and kill them, and then we can still make the equal size litters and don't have to bring new ones in, but it's done in the work together with the litters equalization. Yeah. Bogdan, yeah?
This back to change. This probiotic of a sows.
Yes.
If they will get the sows pregnant, and then they will have better flora in the stomach. You know, the pigs, when they will be born, they will have a little better immunity in the stomach. Because we have some pigs, but they are born with diarrhea.
Yes.
So, you think it can help if the sow will have a better immunity in the stomach, better flora?
I think I understand your question. I'm not going to expect the piglets to have a better be born with a better flora, but they will obtain perhaps a better flora from the beginning because they are not exposed to a bad flora from the beginning, if you understand what I mean, yes. When they are born. Yes. Did I answer your question? Yes, super. Yes?
Also have a question about probiotic.
Yeah?
You give this probiotic in a pregnancy stable or in far stable?
In far stable.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Dry food
I will read up the question here because they tell us down there in the south of Denmark they cannot hear the questions. Sorry about that down in Agerskov. Yeah, you can get your question and I will say it again.
My question about probiotic again, where you give pregnancy stable or fodder stable, and in this farm, in this case, have dry food or wet food.
So the question here is this Bactocell that Rikke mentioned. Is it given for both the pregnancy feed and the feed in the farrowing stable? And also if this farm was having wet food or dry food. So maybe Rikke can tell us. Yeah.
So for this case here, I would use it in the farrowing unit because I want to address the how do you say, fecal output, the shit, from the sow directly to the farrowing unit, to the piglets who are there. For this farm, I think I remember it was dry feed, but I'm sure you can use it both ways. I think I'm not a big expert on feeding opportunities here, but I expect that wet feed will in somehow maybe alter the probiotica because the wet feed is also has a certain pH level. So maybe a feeding expert here would be super. Yeah.
Yeah, and now I think time is up, and I would like to thank Rikke and Sven for nice presentations. And yeah, and they will leave for the Danish room down there, and maybe you will have some nice questions down there as well. So, and to Agerskov, sorry about the first two questions. I will make that better next time. And now I will welcome my colleague Hans. He will talk about the Streptococcus and what can they do to the pigs and what can we do to the Streptococcus. Yeah, welcome.
Thank you very much, Paul. Nice to see you. We have to see the next half an hour talk about the Streptococcus infection. It's an increasing problem. And of course, in many farms, and actually more or less all over the world, it's a big problem. It is in all farms. You cannot say, my farm is free from Streptococcus. It will be all over, and in more or less all farms, there will also be a huge loss to some of it. Sometimes you see, because higher mortality, more dead piglets. Some will be for more brain disease or bad legs, as we'll see later. But for sure, it will be in the last 10 years, we have increasing problem for this disease. We know, have recognized 35 strains and perhaps even more of this disease, but it's, we have found 35, some say it's 26, some say it's 35, but it's still quite many. And in most of your farms, when you go, it's 1 to 3 different strains will be in your farm that will be predominant. That will be the most seen there. We have to remember that it's a zoonosis, and zoonosis means it can transfer from pigs to man or girl. So it's not. So don't, if you have symptoms for brain disease, don't kiss your pig, because it can transfer some of the disease in this case. But when you handle, don't, I know you don't do, but sometimes it can be quite close, and this is why you have to recognize how, take care that don't, especially when ill, and especially signs for Streptococcus infection, it can actually infect men. And we have seen every year in Denmark, there will be 1 to 2 people that will have disease from this kind of disease. It's mostly people from the slaughterhouse, but it's not on the farm. Very seldom for farm, but be careful when you have like this. For sure, in Streptococcus, it's a huge problem in the United States after weaning for many years. And actually, in the United States, they are weaning the piglets earlier. They sometimes wean already 15, 17 days, and then wean them earlier, and this risk factor will open up for the Streptococcus disease in this case. The risk factor for sure is early weaning, high humidity, as we sometimes see, especially in the autumn and summertime or wintertime. Then we'll have higher risk for having Streptococcus diseases. Flu, for sure, we have seen this combination very often. Flu and Streptococcus infection will be a co-infection, and also for sure for PRS or PCV2. So other diseases will open the gate for having this Streptococcus diseases. This is a short movie. I hope that will go. Oh, he's falling asleep. This is from a sick pen. For many, for this, for different. It's a farm with a high problems of the Streptococcus disease, many for brain disease and bad legs. And what we normally see is they have also bad legs. In most of the farms we see more legs that is infected in not only one leg, but perhaps 2 or 4 legs at the same time. And sometimes we call them motorcycle pigs because they look like driving motorcycle, and the ear will go, perhaps if you are many in your farms, will say, it's probably a problem for this Streptococcus. Sometimes when you do necropsy, sometimes we can see that here, inside in the middle, there'll be infection. Normally it should be like a shoeing machine oil, very like watery inside the joint, but here it's very yellow fluid, and means that it's infection in the joint. Common types for Streptococcus suis that we see in Denmark under Danish circumstances is type 2, type 7, and type 9. And in Spain it will be type 1. It will be different from each country that can be predominant. But in Denmark these are the 3 typical strains for Streptococcus suis that we will find. How will the disease develop? The sows are carriers and will be healthy carriers. We don't see any infection for the sows. Up to 30% of all sows can carry the disease, but there's no signs of illness, but will spread to the piglets in the first coming of week after giving birth. So that's a very smart for this disease, that it will go from sows to the piglets, and later on, especially after weaning, we start seeing symptoms. It can be also in the end of farrowing room for 3-4 weeks of age for piglets that can have some problems. The route of infection is through the airways, it's for respiratory way. It's also sometimes for intestinal tract. There can be some signs that it can also influence from edema disease or other diseases from E. coli, diarrhea, so can influence this as well. But for sure, stress in different ways. It's like humans. If you have stress for the sows or especially for the piglets here, they can have a much higher risk for having this streptococcus infection. Zincoxide has been handled actually quite well, because zinc will handle many kind of bacterial diseases, and we have continued for zincoxide until 1 year ago, more or less, and now it was banned. We had to take out all the feed, and now seems to be raising problem. In the beginning it seems to will go okay, but later on it will be more and more problems for the piglets for these signs. What is for sure also very important is the disease development is depending on enough colostrum, and we know that what we would like to have is minimum 160 milliliters, and preferably, if possible, 250 milliliters. It's a small school milk we like to give all piglets, but most of the piglets will perhaps only have 100 milliliters or even less, and this is a risk factor for later on. We know that especially small piglets perhaps will not have enough sufficiently colostrum, and later on, especially weaned when moving and mixing, there can be a higher risk for them later on. For sure, what is the zincoxide was actually to manage the intestinal flora, but also affect all other kind of bacteria. So that's why we simply helped us in many ways to have a zincoxide. But for sure, when this is out, the infection pressure for Streptococcus is going up. And again, it was 1 year ago, and we have taken out. So please make sure that your pigs is free from, and when we take like this smart swab that we can see here, there can be a lot of infection. We take nose swabs. It can be flu, it can be pandemic flu, cytomegalovirus virus, Haemophilus parasuis, and again Streptococcus suis is here, and Bordetella is also there, Mycoplasma hyrenis. A lot of different diseases. Not all of them is significant, but some can influence in the end, can be the healthy of the small piglets. And in this case also APP. But what is important, what you can do is to control PCV2. Mostly we'll do vaccination for this to minimize this, and also to also minimize flu, so we don't see like this. And again, for Streptococcus suis type 2, we can do vaccination if we have a problem. Again, another one free from flu, and also free from pandemic flu, so that's quite good, and also PCV2. So check sometimes what you have different diseases, because can influence, especially if you have a Streptococcus problem. What do we see in your farm? We see sometimes sudden death without any signs of reason. It can be Streptococcus, it can be arthritis, it can be brain infections, and this polyarthritis means that infection in many joints, in the stomach, in the heart, and in the lungs as well can influence this. So sudden death, and also what we very often see, sudden and chronic arthritis, bad legs that will continue. And what is important for you is to really detect early signs of bad legs. Don't wait too long time, because wait too long time it will be chronic, and will be chronic it will end up dying, most of them. Also for brain infection, most of the piglets that have brain infection, they will end up dying. 70-80% will end up by killing, because they can recover to some extent, and when you take them out of the pen, they will be back, and many of these will be, I call them hospital junkies. You know, they decide to stay in the pen, the sick pen, all the time. When have to move them, they will go down, and this is a bad situation. So it's really about seeing the signs as early as we see, a little bit for the area to start treatment. What should we do, and what we should call the vet to find out what is wrong, and to make a necropsy or autopsy? Preferably do more necropsies to be sure that it's working, to find out what's going on. Sent to the lab in Kellerup, and preferably 3 or even 4 or more piglets to send to the lab, because enough to make a proper diagnostic what is going on. For normal vaccination procedure in most of your farms will be similar like this. For PCV2, for the cost of this, 0.3 to 1 crown per kilo. Glasser, around 1 crown per pig. Flu, 1 to 1.5, depending on the protocol that you use. Rotavirus, 1.3 crowns per pig. And Streptococcus, if you're using Streptococcus type 2, Streptococcus, is 0.4. So it's around 4 to 5.2 for protecting the piglets in a good way. This means that it will cost the farmer, for each piglet that you wean, will cost, let's say, 5 Danish crowns. And that would be equivalent to 1% of mortality. So this is important to say. If we can save 1% lower mortality, then it will pay off for the bill, so to say. What is in a farm that we had a lot of problems for Streptococcus problem and meningitis. Typically 1 to 2 weeks after weaning, we send in 3 heads and also some other pigs, and we found Streptococcus type 7. This is typically, as you told you, 2, 7, and 9 is the most predominant. They have infection in the brain. It's encephalitis. They have infection in the brain, so they were very bad for this. What you see when you also check for resistogram, and you're checking this, more or less most of antibiotics actually help. It's a good sign for Streptococcus. You can treat more or less most of the signs or strains from Streptococcus. But the problem is for the yellow card, because we cannot just, it's not a free bar just to use more and more medicine. We have to choose what we want to do. So in this case, if you have diarrhea to E. coli diarrhea, and later on also coli or rotavirus or Lawsonia later on, you have to give treatment, then it will cost too much for yellow card. What you can do is to make autogenous vaccine. It's you can have a permission to make it's only one company, it's Vaccinova in Germany, that will make this vaccine. It's a 100 ml dose, 2 dose, and the problem is actually when you have a problem that it will go more or less up to 3 months before you will have delivering the autogenous vaccine. So that's a long way to wait, especially if you have a big problem, that you have to wait to this. And also when you already have the vaccines starting up, please remember to reorder. It's a veterinary that needs to do reorder early, so we don't will be a slip for without any vaccine, because actually again it will take perhaps 9 to 12 weeks. It can be sometimes be shorter, but mostly it will be around 8 weeks before ordering to have the vaccine. It's quite a long time. The price range can be depending on how many doses you make. Normally after 2,000 doses it will be a reduction and less, and if you even order 4,000 or 5,000 you can be lower, up to more or less €2 or 13 Danish crowns. So, and another thing also, that you have an opportunity to put in extra pathogen. If you have more diseases in your farm, you can make autogenous vaccine for an extra disease. And this will cost not very much, 20 euros per dose, 1.5 crown per this dose price for this. So actually it's a quite cheap way to make extra vaccines for different diseases. How is the effect of the vaccines? Generally very good, especially type 7 and also type 2. But not as good as for type 9. Type 9, if you find this, is a little bit more challenging. We see more problems. It takes longer time to recover and see a full efficacy. Normally vaccination will be 6 and 3 weeks before farrowing, and after this vaccination you only give the sows 3 weeks before farrowing, like most of the other vaccines that we use in the farm. If you have a very big problem, you can also give the dose to all piglets, so depending on the problem, and especially if you have type 9, I think you need to do reduced dose but give to all piglets before weaning in order to have efficacy, especially if you have a high mortality. Most of what we see, if you have a problem, we can see a reduction. Let's say we have 3% mortality, it will reduce to 0.2 to 1% for mortality for Streptococcus diseases. So mostly it's a very good return on investment. I had some farms that actually died 100 piglets every week. It's very, very high mortality, very, very bad, and piglets were laying all over like this, so very bad. But now it's down to 2 piglets that's dying every week, so much, much less. So it's really will be helpful, but it takes time to see the full efficacy. Cost of vaccine, as we just said, 13 will be for per sow will be 50 to 60 Danish crowns per sow, because like let's say 18 Danish crowns per dose, and then 2.3 times, and this like will be like this. If you produce 35 piglets, the price will be 1.8 Danish crowns per price per each piglet. And I will say for most of the farms that we started off, we have seen an efficacy for 1.5 to 2% reduction of mortality. So there will be a payment for this. Also, other thing is management, diagnostic. Make sure that you don't have PRS or PCV2, hygiene, biosecurity, all the old classic things to measure and minimize infection problem. Data for sure find out that you grow and feed intake. We can see if you handle streptococcal diseases very well, especially the growth will perform much better because they don't have this disease they're struggling with for some weeks before they recover completely. Antibiotic will for sure go up if you have a lot of problems. It's working normally very good, but the challenge is that if you have a yellow card problem, that it can be a problem to give proper treatment if you don't have enough antibiotic to use within the yellow line. Drying up is very, very important, and I will say this is very important. What you can do in your farm is really to dry out the pen before putting in new pigs. Really emphasize that you have to use heating to make sure that you come in, it's completely dry when the piglets are coming into the pen. This is so important. If too wet when coming in, then the humidity will go up, and there's a much higher risk for the piglets. In the future, there will be an increase of vaccines, and especially autochthonous vaccine. In the whole world, there will be 700,000 dying from antibiotic resistance and using antibiotic, and the WHO means that it will be 10 million people that will die for resistant bacteria and not be able to treat. In this case, it's a problem. And this will mean that the yellow card in Denmark also will be lowering. The problem is in Denmark that we have a monopoly for the autochthonous vaccines, so it's a problem that we cannot send it out to other pharmaceutical companies that can take over, so that's a problem. Also, that's a problem that we cannot use for viral diseases, only bacteria that we can use. This is some of the typical diseases for autochthonous vaccine, from APP to Brachyspira, and what will be the future could be very interesting to have an autochthonous vaccine for Brachyspira that you probably have seen especially in the late weaning or in the finisher farm, that they have problems for this, and diarrhea can be a problem. But the combination for many of these can also help many of the farms. So, to take home, Streptococcus is a growing problem. Typically, it's behind the treatment. You sometimes don't recognize that you have a problem, but can see that the piglets are not performing perfectly, but it's difficult to find out what's going on. Vaccine and autochthonous vaccines can be a really good solution. Several diseases must be combined or can be combined in order to minimize the problem. Autochthonous vaccines, they have a monopoly right now, but hopefully it will be in the future that it can be more opened up so more farms can use it. And if you have problems for streptococcus or have diseases for this, please call me or call us. All for everything.
Thank you, Hans. Is it mine? No. Yeah, Hans is a very experienced speaker, so he got it right on time. But I think if any questions for Hans, we can have them. Also down in Agerskov or Holstebro, if you have any questions, send them on the chat eventually, or directly through Anne. So, but I think interesting with this Streptococcus, it's filling quite a lot out there in some farms indeed. It's nice to see this resistance pattern that we can use almost any kind of medicine, but the issue is that not all kinds of medicine can go to the brain. In general, it's a problem to get medicine passing to the brain. That's the main problem. So it seems like no questions here. Just a moment. Yeah. So no further questions. Hans, thank you for a nice presentation. And now next speaker should be Niels Helund talking about the economy in saving pigs. I guess he will be right outside. Otherwise, we'll just have a 2 minutes break until he is here. And also, it will only be 2 minutes in Agerskov as well, and then we are ready again. Okay. Short break. Yeah, please have something to drink. It's very hot in here. I think you will find out, Niels.
Thank you.
So I will welcome Niels Helund from Villas. He will talk about money. Yeah, that's how it is. And he will tell us why we should try to save the last pig. Yeah, early on we had Sven from the lab telling us to kill the small piglets underneath 500 grams. Yeah, maybe now when Niels is finished here, we will try to save them again. But welcome to you, Niels. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yes. My subject here is to look at how many things, what will pay for you to invest in the last pig. Last pig means if we can get one more pig out of the number of sows we have now, what does it give us? What value does that have? And what can we maybe invest to get this extra pig? Yes, the agenda. This is investing. Yes, in the pig. First, I will look at the expectations to the piglet price. Talking about investment right now is, of course, due to the very high prices that we get, especially on the export market. I will look into the value. What is the value of the last pig? What I call the marginal pig. And right now and for the next year or so. And I've looked into some different examples, like investing in more hands, upskilling of your daily routines, both in the farrowing bar and by the poults and in the climate stables. Looked into some, maybe you can put some things in the feed, some extra things. They might cost something, but it could pay. Maybe milk feeder, then finally a conclusion. When we look at the market price on the pig, we can see how the price has gone up. This is the export price. Two different ones, the Danish and the German here, they follow each other very closely. But you can see here we have through 2023, from around here, week 5, the price has just gone up. There's a big demand of pigs in Germany, and in Poland, more countries, that makes the price on the pig very high. So, and sometimes you can get even more. For some good herds, they get above 800 kroners right now. So that's very good. That may not last, we don't know. But if we look at or our head organization, Fokus, they have a forecast here from May, where they look at, well, how do they think the prices will develop. And you can see here that if we look at we've already passed first half year in 23. When we look at the next coming year, we have a forecast of 500 kroners per pig. And that's the value I have used for my calculations here in the following slides. First, how much does it take to make one extra pig? How much change in our key figures? How many % dead? How many live-borns? If we have a herd where we have 18 live-born per litter, 15% dead piglets, 2.25 liter per sow per year, 4% dead in the climate, then one extra sold pig, we have every time we have 1.54 more live-born per litter, or 0.46 weaned per litter, or 3% less dead piglets in the farrowing stable. So every time we change, for example, by 3%, that gives us a whole extra pig to sell per sow per year. And what's the value of that extra pig? Well, here's my calculation. Sorry, I haven't translated it all, but sales price may be right now 800 kroners, if it's really good. Then we have some, the sow will need to eat a little bit extra to produce the extra amount of milk for the extra pig. That's 32 kroners. The pig itself will need a little bit dry food, or maybe some milk. You don't get much milk for 4 kroners, but at least you get some some cost for the dry food. The climate, in the climate stable, all the food the pig will eat there, we have to detract some vaccines for this pig, and then some extra labor. It will take a little bit of extra labor if there's an extra pig. So here I've calculated it takes 10 minutes from birth till you sell it, till 30 kilos. That's 33 kroners. So that means you have a value, a profit on the marginal pig, 590 kroners, if the sales price is 800 kroners. If it's only 500 as a forecast said, then you will end up with a little more than 300 kroners per pig. So that's important to know when you start to calculate what can I invest, how much will I need to improve the result to pay this investment. And my first example is here, invest in more hands. A lot of places, the people working there are maybe running very fast. They have a lot of work. So maybe sometimes you could, as an owner, you could consider maybe I should, for a while, hire an extra person, because the price on the pigs is very good. And if this extra person, when I invest in that, this will give me maybe an extra outcome of 1 pig per sow per year. So that means I will have 307,000 in profit that I can pay my extra hand with. For example, maybe that's 300 300,000, then there's not much left then. But an extra person, you get a easier and a better holiday handling. You don't have to run really fast, or you don't have to get some unexperienced persons from who normally drives the tractor, or even worse, maybe the owner himself. No, you can cover the holiday without decreasing your productivity. We often see that the productivity go down when the qualified, the skilled persons, they go on holiday. You can also then certainly have time to upgrade your maintenance on the stable. Maybe you already have using a lot of rope and other unqualified things to keep the things together. Now you have suddenly time to do it properly and exchange some of the material. You also have less stress on your staff. They don't have to run so fast. That means, you can run fast for a while, but you get tired of it after a while. You get sore legs and you get tired of working in this place. So maybe you can avoid that your hired personnel, that they don't shift so often, that they don't quit and find another place to work. And then you can maybe avoid the overtime payment, because now you have an extra person, then there's no need for buying or for having overtime. Another thing could be, it's also an extra person. Maybe it could be a night shift, a night nurse that comes in, evening night shift on your big farrowing days. Someone extra you buy in 3 days a week, 5 hours a day, 52 weeks a year, to 200 kroners per hour. That's a cost of a little above 150,000. But then this person can look at keep an extra focus on the farrowing sows and the evening feeding. See everybody gets up, all the sows gets up, and they don't lay down on their piglets. Again, you don't have to pay overtime, because this person can take some of the things that the other persons will otherwise work with. This extra cost, 156,000, that equals 460 marginal pigs. So that's what you have to improve your result with, to pay for this night nurse here. And when you figure it out, she or he has to lift the result with 1.25 more live-born. So reduce the dead-born, maybe reduce the mortality rate in the farrowing. It doesn't take much to pay for this extra. Not right now. Also a very good investment, I think. I come from an advisory service, so we would like to sell some good advices. So one of the things that we have specialized in is farrowing management. I have a colleague called Elisa. This is just an example of, but anyway, get a person out to help you look at your daily routines in the farrowing stable. Maybe Elisa here, she comes out early in the morning when you start in the farrowing stable. Then she will work with the people in the farrowing unit and help them to maybe to train new employees. She will have a brand new person that has no or only little experience in the farrowing stable. She will help that this person will get the right routines from the beginning, or help to improve your current routines. Try to, if you have a mortality rate right now of 15% in the farrowing, then Elisa will tell you, no, that's not good enough. We can reduce that with 3%. She was out working herself 2 years ago, until 2 years ago, and she couldn't like mortality rates above 10%. She was very angry if she herself had more than 10%. So she's a very, it's just an example, but this type of persons that has tried themselves, has had their hands on the routines, they are very good at this kind of supervision, advisory things. As we said, or as I said before, 3% less dead. That's the same thing as one marginal pig, the value of 307 kroners per sow. 1% is then only 102 kroners, but with 1,000 sows, that will give you a profit of 100,000, and she may cost 15,000 for a series of visits, like 5 visits or so, very close to each other. So a very good profit. Another example of up-qualifying daily routines is with the poults, the gilts, the young ones. We very often see that this is a soft spot in your production. The poults are maybe not you doing real good on litter size. Maybe they don't last so long once they're entering the sow herd. Get some supervision to look, get an advisor to look at your management with the poults, the feeding, the reproduction, the age and the back fat when you have your first mating on the poults. Is this as good as it can be? And the goal is, what you want to is, of course, to increase the litter size and to improve this poult's lifetime in the herd. We want the new animals to stay long, because it costs every time we have to change. It costs money, and yes, if you can increase the poult's litter size with 0.54, which we know is a one marginal pig, if you can do that on the poults, that's 25% of the herd. Then you have like almost 80,000 in profit if this was a whole year for an input of 15,000. So also a good focus to have right now where the money is there. Same thing in the climate station. If you're not satisfied with the results in the climate station, try and get maybe an advisor out to look. The value of 1% dead in the climate is in here, 3.77 kroners per pig, calculated on every pig. That's the value if you can reduce with 1%. You take it's the average of the wiener and the sales price, the average of those two, and then divide it by 100. That's what I have shown here. And if we could sell the pig and get 800 kroners, then this value would be above 5 kroners. So every time we can reduce with 1%, and like we have here again, 1,000 sows, you sell 34,000 climate pigs times 3.77. That's almost 30,000. For an input of 20,000, that's a profit of more than 100,000. So, of course, you should not invest unless you have expectations of lifting your results. But as you can see, it doesn't take so much lifting before the cost is paid. It could also be investing in your feed. Blood plasma, for example, is a very, very expensive raw material, but it's very, very easily digested by the new weaned pig and can make the weaning a lot easier for the pig. But very often we don't put this in the mix because it's just too expensive. 5% blood plasma will increase the cost with 85 kroners per 100 kilos. And you typically, so you use 5 kilos of this starter mix. So this will increase the cost on every pig with more than 4 kroners. But we've seen before that 1% dead in climate has the value of almost 3 kroners. Or if we have the high sales price, we are on 5.25. So that means if you can reduce by 1.13 by using this very good feed, but very expensive feed, then you're home safe. You may, so if you can reduce here, if you have the high sales price, if you can reduce by 0.8, and if you at the same time can reduce the feed use, then there's a profit to make. So I think right now with that high price, this is a very good thing to try, if you have problems. Of course, if you already have only 2% dead in the climate, don't worry about it, because then it looks like you're doing well. But that's not how it always is. You can also upgrade on other ways. Our head organization, Segis, has recently made a field trial where they put some extra feed for the farrowing sow, an extra feed mix along with the normal feed mix, so that the sow gets more of, and this feed mix contains a lot of fibers and some special energy. And the result was that by the older sows, the 3rd to the 7th litter sow, they reduced the death-born percentage by 1.7%. So if you have 21 total born, that means when you improve with 1.7%, that gives you 1.35 more live born on the older sows. And it's always the older sows that are the problem. You know yourself that they sometimes get a lot of the dead born. And compared to the value of the marginal pig, then it will this will equals, or this will give you 195 kroners per sow per year. And the cost is this extra food, 7 feed units, 47 kroners, some extra work, because you have manual to go and give this feed. Not so nice, but if I put cost on the extra work, that's 33 kroners. So that gives you a profit of 115 kroners per sow per year, but only on the older sows. So if that's for 55% of the herd, that will sum up to 63,000 kroners. So also an investment that you may consider. See, maybe this is something for us that would increase live-borns, decrease dead-borns. Toxin binder, something we talk about every year. Should we have toxin binder in the sow food? Toxins can come from the kernels in springtime on the field. There's some fungus that makes this toxin, and then we give it to the sows. They don't produce so well. The price to put this toxin binder in is 5 kroners per 100 feed units. So if we put this in all year, then we have an extra cost of 75 kroners. And with a value of 307 per pig, that means we have to either increase the result by so much or avoid that the production is going down with this, because we we have put in the toxin binder. Sometimes the toxins just come, well, not just, but they come from the rest of the wheat in the silo, where we have all the dirt and the shit and the bad worst stuff from the wheat. So it can be a very good idea here, the last 4 months before new harvest, to put in the toxin binder. And then you only have to improve the results by so little to pay for the costs. This was not translated, but milk feeder, you can see what it is. It costs something to put up the system, maybe it varies a little bit, but for a krone, 1 krone per pig, the investment per year, if this will last 8 years. The big cost is the milk, 12 to 15 kronas per pig milk will cost if you don't use it, only use it for the first 3 weeks of the pig's lifetime. Then there's some cost for the cleaning and electricity, total 480 kronas per sow. So you have to lift the result with 1.56 sold pig to pay for this, if this was the only advantage. But maybe you can also lift the weaning weight, so you can reduce a little bit of the expensive first mix in the climate. Yes, just always try to evaluate your investments. Do you get value for the money? Do you get enough out of your investments? Here we see this is a comparison between some herds. Here's this one herd, the orange column. He has a very, very good result on weaned pigs per year. And here's his result in kronas. And then he can compare to maybe the best that we have out here, the best 25%. How he's better, he's 1 pig better, but looking at the profit per sow, it's a little bit less. So he should look a bit more specific into his results to see what is it that I have a very good result here, but I can see here I have, this is the pigs, the small pigs feed, the cost for the feed for the pigs. That's one of the highest cost he has. So this could be where he should look. Maybe I put too much blood plasma in my starter mix, or maybe I'd use it too long. Each pig gets 10 feed units or 10 kilos, and that's what costs. Yeah, conclusion on all these calculations, considerations about different investments. Right now, with the current sales price, lot of different actions are profitable. Of course, not them all, but one by one, the price in the pig can pay. One thing we must not forget is that the value I put on the marginal pig is depending on that there's room enough in the climate. Because if the climate is already full, then you cannot expect to have the same results if you put an extra pig, maybe one, but what about the next one, or number 3, or number 4? At one stage, the results may start to decline. Maybe you will get a little bit more dead in the climate, little lower feed use, feed conversion rate. So maybe you don't get the full potential of my 500 kronas per marginal pig or 300. Also, as soon as the price on the pig drop, you have to evaluate, should I drop some of my investments, the night shift that I put on, maybe I should take her out again or him out again because now it doesn't pay. So you have to follow the price and then adjust. From my point of view, I think the biggest economical potential is to get some supervision that can help you get the very good results, because that's not an investment that lasts. That's a one-time investment that can maybe heighten your results for a longer period. Yes, those were the words.
Thank you to Niels for his nice presentation here.
Thank you. I should have put on shorts.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, and now we know that with the prices right now, it is beneficial to save the last pig, of course.
Could also be some vaccinations.
It could be, like Hans told us right before.
Yeah.
Lots of vaccinations to be looked at. It could be relevant in more farms, indeed. So, but we have already passed the time schedule, and to be sure that also we get a piece of cake out here and a cup of coffee, then we should go out there. Any questions from the room here to Niels? Otherwise, yeah.
Did you show the same presentation to the Danish room?
Yes.
Was it exactly the same?
No, it wasn't Danish.
Yeah, okay. But inside it was the same?
Yes.
And what the farmer says about the extra hands on the farm?
Just a minute. The question here was if this presentation from Niels also was made the same way for the owners in the other room. And what was your answer, Niels?
Yes, it was. Yes, they didn't react, so not much.
I guess you are especially focused on the first punchline with investing in the new worker out there, more hands. Indeed, it could be relevant once in a while to have more hands in the stables. Yes, indeed. So, thank you for this time, and we'll have a coffee break, and then we'll meet in the big room down there for the presentation of the winners this year after coffee break. So, see you down there. Okay.